All right. So we're so excited that you're here to talk about engaging your local church and public school ministry. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Mindy Heine, but before I do that, I just have to say that as an educator of 30 years, I spent a lot of my career feeling very isolated, alone. Um, I was not informed as far as what I could or could not do as a Christian in public schools. And I really felt a lack of support and community. And then I met Mindy Heine. She and a group of people met in her living room um, to talk about the ways that our church could come alongside educators, as well as parents and students, to just build community and equip and inspire and see what God would do with it. And it has been just a joyful journey to be. I've had this opportunity to be with Mindy on this journey. And at Christian Educators. We have really developed a sweet partnership with Compass Public School Ministry, and she is going to kind of give a vision, tell her story, hopefully spark and inspire some ideas for us tonight as well. So, Mindy, go ahead, share a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, and we definitely want this to be interactive too, so we look forward to answering some questions along the way. So thank you so much, Heather, for inviting us to be here today and just to share what God's doing here in our public schools through Grace Church here in Minnesota. I know what I'm going to share today you won't find on the headlines of any news website or newspaper. Often the headlines we read about our public schools can be very different, but we're really excited about what's happening here and are excited to share a little bit about what God is doing here in Minnesota. So, just this morning, I was at our women's Bible study and we were discussing how, when you go into a jewelry store and jewelers always place the diamonds against black velvet because the contrast really allows that diamond to shine even more brightly. And I thought, as I was listening to that, I was thinking that is such a good visual as we think about public school ministry. There are challenges. There's definitely a darkness there, but those things really are creating opportunities for Christians to shine brightly as they mobilize intentionally within their schools. So, like Heather mentioned, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Compass Public School Ministry, but it's really our prayer that this vision and the story of what God's doing here is going to spread to other churches around the country. So we're just really grateful that you're all here. I do want to be clear from the beginning as I start talking that there is absolutely nothing cookie cutter about church-based public school ministry. There is not one way to go about doing this. Every church is different, and we're going to get into that in a little bit as well. So what is Compass? Well, Compass, like Heather mentioned, we started in 2013, and Heather was there right from the very beginning. And Compass is basically, bottom line, it's a church-based, gospel-centered public school ministry. We work to come alongside Christian educators and Christian families in the public school, and then we work to connect them within their schools, within their districts, and equip them for gospel impact. So we have three primary focuses in what we do. The first is really about building community, and that's connecting Christians in the schools at both the school level and the district level. And that really comes out of Hebrews, 10, 24, and 25. We're all about spurring one another on toward love and good deed and not giving up meeting together. And it's really that community piece is really at the heart of what we do. And then secondly, we work to equip Christians for impact, and we do that through what we call our prayer, care, share framework. So we impact our schools as we intentionally pray, as we generously care, and that's really that service piece. As a church, we strive to be the hands and feet of Christ. We say at Grace, we do good deeds to generate goodwill, to share the good news. And then last is that share piece, prayer, care, share. And that's all about sharing the gospel as God opens doors to do that. And we share legal and creative ways that you can go about doing that. And then our last focus is really about growing the movement by casting the vision to the local church. And that's really what today is all about. So the why, I'm often asked the why behind public school ministry, and really our story, it was about a felt need. There was a felt need for ministry we felt within our church that focused on, providing support for our families and our educators within the public schools within our church. In those early years, we learned that Christian educators were in desperate need of community, resources, and support. We learned that Christian families really wanted to connect with others within their schools. They were looking for tools and vision for their families and how to navigate public school in a God-honoring way. And there was really that aha moment where we really said, public schools are the largest across the street mission field in our nation. And that really drove us as we approached our church leadership and together committed to developing and implementing a ministry that would work to connect, equip, and mobilize those within our schools.
Yeah, and Mindy, I think that is a really great segue into, because I think we have such a vibrant ministry, but it had to start somewhere, right? And especially at our particular church, it's a really big church, a lot of different people to talk to. Could you just share a little bit about how those conversations started and how people might begin to have that conversation with their pastors and get them thinking about the public schools as a ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to highlight, and I said it already, is just again, there's not a one size fits all here. Every church is different, different sizes, different priorities, different resources available to them. Um, but yeah, I think you know your church best. But I did put together just a few thoughts as you either as a church leader or consider approaching your church leadership with this vision. So a few things that I wanted to share with you today. One is really start with considering the opportunities for your church within the public schools, and that's really a time to think about this mission field maybe in a way that you haven't thought about before. And that really starts with thinking about some of the statistics. And I'm going to share my website in a little bit that has all this information on there, so you don't have to write all this down. But just the fact that in our nation there are over 50 million students who attend public schools. Although some Christian families have resources or a calling to homeschool or to send their kids to Christian schools, churches are finding that in many cases, most of their families are a part of the public school system. And then of the 3.1 million public school educators, close to 650,000 of them claim to be Christians. So many of our public school educators are Christians and they're on the front lines. They have so much opportunity for impact and they really do need the support of their churches. And obviously, in addition to supporting those within the churches who attend our public school, there's just the countless number of students and staff who walk those hallways, who don't know Jesus and may never set foot in a church. So there's really just endless opportunities for outreach and evangelism right across the street in our schools.
Hmm. And
Um,
so, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, how would you, who would you talk to and how would you approach that type of conversation? I love that there are some really good statistics around the numbers, and the need. Can
Mhm.
you talk to us about those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one question to ask, as you as a church leader or as you approach church leadership is, how does public school ministry align with the mission and the focus of your church? And Compass has had tremendous support across all levels of leadership at Grace, because of the mission of who we are as a church. Our mission is to make extraordinary efforts to make disciples of Jesus Christ across the street and around the world. So missions is really at the core of what we do across all ministries. And this was and continues to be a driving factor in why and how Grace supports this ministry. And so a few questions as you are a church leader or consider approaching church leadership, a few questions to think about. And again, this is all on the website link that I will send you. One is, do you believe as a church that public school is a viable option for Christian families and educators? Do you believe God calls some families and educators into the public school? Another great question is, do you agree that public schools are a huge opportunity for outreach and evangelism, that they are the largest across the street mission field, not only in our community, but also across the nation? And then if yes to either of those questions, then as a church, what really is our responsibility, or what is our opportunity within the public schools as a church? What will our strategy be to reach this mission field? How can we come alongside those at our church who are already a part of this mission field? How can we help connect them? How can we help them find each other? How can we provide resources to help them to navigate public school in a God-honoring way? How can we cast that vision for impact? What will that look like? And how can we be strategic and intentional in the way that we reach into our schools as a church? And then Heather, you asked the question about the who. When you think about your church leadership, I would really encourage you to pray. It was definitely, when I bring myself back to, 12 years ago, and think about the process that it all played out, it wouldn't have been the most logical leader in our process, but I would really encourage you to just pray about that and allow God to really lead you. Public school ministry doesn't really naturally fit often in one place. So considering, if you have a missions area or students or families, maybe outreach, that'll look different in every church. Also be thinking about your church leadership. Is there anyone on the staff who may have a connection to the public school that maybe would help them be more sensitive to this vision and the opportunities, or increase the chances that they would champion an effort like this? Maybe a pastor whose kids are a part of the public schools, or a former teacher. But I would also encourage you to not get discouraged. If you get that glazed look, which I've gotten that glazed look at times, don't give up. Continue to pray, continue to maybe ask the staff for suggestions as to where something like this might best fit within your church.
Those are some really great ideas. And I love how you said, you just need to pray, like, Lord, show me who is that person to talk to, who can take that vision or that heart that you have for public schools and champion it at your church. And so thank you. And we are really lucky to have one of those champions on our call tonight. So Jim Erickson is a pastor at Grace Church, and he really has a passion for public schools. And I was just wondering if you take some time and share how you see this opportunity. What would you say to fellow pastors who are considering this, or even educators who might be approaching their churches?
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening. I guess for you California people, it's still plenty early. My name's Jim. I've been at Grace Church along with Mindy and Heather now for about 10 years. Before that, I pastored a church in our town I was on staff 13 years and was a senior pastor for about 6.5. So I've had this journey of like a 500-ish person church and now 6,000 person church. I've learned this: people are people. You can change the context, but the problems are often the same. So for the 10 years, like Mindy and crew kind of got off the ground with Compass right before I joined. And I will say this, the fact that they are fully volunteer. Recently we got some extra funding, and from our budget, we've been able to support ministry stuff. But from a staffing perspective, it's been fully volunteer. Huge blessing. Couldn't have done it without. So to your, and the other thing I'd say is, so I'm 51 now, 4 kiddos, 1 boy, 3 girls, 1 out of college, married in the Navy, killing it. The next, another one finishing up college with a nursing degree. And then a 20-year-old special needs kid who we love, and then a junior in high school. So I've kind of seen the spectrum. Now that I'm older, I get some street credit in the education, like parenting realm. So in terms of your question, I think when approaching, like having been on the receiving end of a well-meaning person with a great idea, I have been in seasons where like my plate is completely full. The idea of adding something else makes my head hurt. But some suggestions I would make is, anytime you can go to a pastor or a leader with the idea of, hey, I feel like our church wants to reach people and have a positive impact in our community for the gospel. And I know our church wants to capture the hearts of the next generation. I'm wondering, as a volunteer, if I can come alongside and we could maybe try a few things on how we can develop influence in a good way in our public school system. If you start out with you kind of start with the vision and like, I'm willing to serve, I'm not asking anything. Can we try something? And if it works, maybe we'll talk about what it could look like to expand. I think the odds of fostering a healthy conversation goes better. I've been on the other end where it's like, we need to do this and we don't do enough of that. And it's like, I agree, but I don't know how to help you. So not that you guys would do that, but I think your odds of success go up. I think Mindy touched on it. Every church has its own culture, and in any church, there's probably the three lanes of education: the public school, private school, and homeschool. And depending on your church and your community, there are differing degrees of emotional passion around those lanes, either extremely for one of the lanes or potentially extremely against one of the lanes. And I have seen all three extremely passionate in some unreasonable ways and some reasonable ways. Wherever your culture is, you kind of have to start there and figure out how do we come to balance. But I think Mindy's exactly right. In most cases, most people will end up in public school just for pragmatic reasons. And it's okay to acknowledge that. And I think in every different area, like in our area, Minnesota, highly liberal in the last years, literally some, I would say, insane policies and recommendations and curriculum. So we get it on that end of the spectrum. And yet there is a massive diversity of culture and leadership from school to school and from district to district. So this kind of one size fits all public school horrible is a really uninformed, non-experience based opinion. And it doesn't take long to kind of parse that out to say, well, let's not get too into the generalities. But all that to say, because most people end up in a public school, which I think is a good thing in some ways, it's a great place to put an investment on both fronts, coming alongside parents and students to help them journey in the public school space well, and thinking through the process of which of the educational lanes they might end up with is a win. And then also being supportive of Christians in the public school system especially is a huge win, because in many times they are the ones that are kind of holding the line, if you will, on what I would argue is our constitutional right, but more importantly, the biblical mandate to be salt and light in our communities. So I could go on for hours, but let me take over there and ask another question, or how can I be helpful?
So what positive impact have you seen as a result of this within the body of Christ?
Yeah, I think in the Grace context, where we are from here in Minnesota now, I think we've waffled back and forth historically, and I mean this generously and graciously. We have some people with some really strong opinions around homeschooling, and that's not a bad thing. I'm pro any one of the lanes. The way I've learned to say it is, and this has been our family's experience, any child in any one of those three lanes in any season can thrive or struggle. So we've had kids in all three lanes. We've had kids that have jumped lanes, and we've had kids that have crushed it. And I've had kids that like, wow, this is horrible. I used to joke when we were younger, my wife and I aren't going to homeschool because our kids would end up dumb or dead. Like we were like, this is not our space. So we've journeyed that. I think the positive thing I see is, depending on your church culture and the community you're in, just being able to be a sounding board is huge. Helping parents navigate the decision-making process of those lanes is huge. Helping parents who might feel like they're called to have an opportunity to have influence in their community through the public school and validating that calling is huge. At sometimes helping people feel like they're not a bad Christian or a bad parent because they might be putting their kid in a secular environment. I mean, again, every family, every kid, and every season has to reevaluate where their kid is doing, what school they're in, and the state of their soul. But that said, I do think kids and students can thrive in public schools. Every kid is bent and goes through different seasons, so we got to pastor that. But that sounding board at times, a counterbalance, I think is super helpful. I think the encouragement, though it's not been a ton, to public school educators and administrators and workers to kind of say, hey, we champion what you're doing. We know it's a hard job. We know that you are the hands and feet of Jesus in the educational system. We see you. We appreciate you. I think that is a more encouraging to those on the other end than maybe we realize.
I would say 100% yes to that. For a church to recognize that this is a mission field and that it's hard and that we appreciate you representing Christ there means a lot, whether it's a teacher who's there or parents who are engaged in shining their light, right, wherever they are at. And you're right, like there is not a one size fits all. And so I think that's another great thing to bring up when you're talking with your churches, understanding that there are the three lanes and that we don't go in disrespecting people who are in any of those lanes, but we welcome further conversation. So that's great wisdom. Thanks, Jim. Mindy, did you have some more things you wanted to go over and talk about with the group before we do questions?
You know, one of the things that I just wanted to reference, let's see if I can actually share my screen. Okay, Heather. Heather was teaching me how to do this today. I'll fully disclose that. All right, so now I lost it. Hang on.
Hey, Mindy, as you pull that up,
Yeah.
one other comment, more and more. So again, now that our kids are older, I field questions from families that are kind of jumping into the kindergarten preschool age. And one of the things that, again, not advocating for any of the particular lanes, is helping parents think through the financial realities of their decision. Assuming that you can get a kid into a private school right now, which is a big assumption in Minnesota, there's just not enough slots. I'm encouraging families, like, you need to do the math. If you've got a couple kids and you're paying for their private education from kindergarten through 12th grade, times 2, times 3, times 4, you need to think about that outlay and make sure that in your fiscal reality and in your stewardship, how that plays out. Because a lot of families aren't thinking ahead. We weren't. We put our oldest in at our local Chapel Hill, thought this is great. And then our next one came along and we thought, oh, great, this is going to be really expensive. And we're like, uh-oh, we can't afford to have 4 kids in private school. We just don't have the means. And as it turned out, our third kid was special needs. And so we mainstreamed her in the public school, and she got amazing support in the special needs world. And then her younger sister followed her. So we had kind of 2 private, 2 public. And then our son finished 8th grade and then joined public, graduated from public school. Our daughter then finished private school and went to college through a thing here in Minnesota. But so there's all these different tracks. But beyond just like the spiritual reality, the influence, the ideology, and all of that, peer pressure and all that, I do think it's a good thing to have the financial conversation on the front end. And I think it's another reason why we need to be well equipped to help families succeed in the public school space, because a lot of families, rightly so, are not going to be able to afford private school. And if both families are working or they just don't feel like they're up for it, they can't do homeschool. So you're going to be in the public school lane. And I don't think that that's like the third of the 3 lanes. It's just one of the lanes, and every family has to decide what's best for them. So sorry, I added that in. Can you share the screen now?
I got it. Yes. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So I just wanted to share our website. So, you know, one of the things I want to say as a part of this call is really to offer our support and just offer us as a resource too, as, you know, God might be calling you to just ask some questions. What could this look like as a church leader? How might I go about bringing this to my church? And so if you go to our website, compasslink.org, /churches. If you scroll down, you're going to see, some steps to consider. And I won't walk through these now, but, some of the things I talked about are here. Some of these statistics are here. And, how to build your team. We talked a little bit about a commissioning. That's a step that you can take as a church. I'm coming alongside a few churches already. We're really early on in kind of that process. But one of the steps that many of them are doing is holding a commissioning service in the fall. And that's really a way to kind of plant your flag as a church and say, we see you as a missionary, and we're going to commission you in a similar way as we would a missionary that we're sending around the world. And so there's some resources. There's a little video to one of our commissioning services here at Grace Church, but that's just a really easy yet powerful way to kind of support our educators and to really spend that time covering them in prayer. And then, lots of different ways to connect, equip, and moving forward. The other thing that I wanted to share with you was I'm starting to do more and more as people are reaching out. There's kind of I want to be able to I'm calling it Compass Services, but I don't really like that term. But there's kind of 3 C's. So as you're thinking about, gosh, I'm kind of feeling like this is something I might want to do, but I want to learn more. This is something that we're kind of doing more and more of now, where you can meet with one of us from our team and really talk through, consult, connect, champion, spend some time just allowing us to ask you some questions, really process through what's God calling you to do, what are your goals, how can we help you make some connections, some partnerships through the connection piece, and then just be an ongoing support and encouragement along the way. So lots of resources on the website, lots of resources on through this little consulting services, I guess, if you call it, for lack of a better word. But just want to definitely let you know that we are here for you and want to support and answer any questions and just help you take steps that God may be calling you to take.
Could you repeat the website, please?
Yes, and I can put it in the chat too. It's compasslink.org.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just put it in, and I'll do the /churches too, just so you see that link, and can click on that too. But yeah, and we have a ton of resources. We're actually going to be making some tweaks to our website in the next couple of months, but there are a ton of resources there if you are a family, if you are an educator, if you are a community member, just different ways that you can be praying, specific ways you can pray, specific ways our prayer, serve, share the gospel, gets into all the religious liberties, legal stuff. I know Christian Educators keeps you well informed of all that great information, but we have that there as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we always appreciate, especially in the role that I have as the Awake Director, is finding those churches that are passionate about public schools, and then they will come alongside and host or sponsor or support some of the Christian educator initiatives too. And that's actually something really cool to bring to your church, because it's a ready-made program. It's already ready to go. And it just needs a place to have it hosted and maybe some resources to come alongside. But Grace is, I think how many? I think we've had 7.
Yeah, we love our partnership with Christian Educators. We've been partnering now really since the very beginning. I think since our very first breakfast 12 years ago, some of those initial connections were made. And we've run hundreds of we have about 1,800 educators and families across over 90 Minnesota districts right now. So we've run hundreds of our educators through the Awake experience, kind of metro-wide. You're right, 7, I think, just right at Grace Church. But we love our partnership, and we work really well together, and hopefully we will for many, many years in the future.
Absolutely. Hey, does anyone have questions for Mindy or Jim about your own church or circumstances, advice that you might need? Well, Wendy.
Hello, this
Oh.
is, yeah, this is Glenn Kennedy. We're not putting our video on because we've been on the road for about 10 hours today, just got home and looking sort of rumpled. But
Okay.
I'm wondering, in terms of connections between the church and the public schools. Now, I heard you speaking about being supportive of parents within your congregation or even community in terms of what they have to consider in deciding whether to go public school, Christian school, or homeschooling kind of thing, and intimating the connection for Christian educators with Christian teachers in schools. Have you any advice or information about connections you've made with the schools themselves in any sort of way, in a way that the schools, other than just the Christian educators in the schools, have there been ways you found effective in supporting the schools visibly or meaningfully as a church through this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, the answer to that would be yes. So through our framework for impact, we have prayer, care, share. So we have, obviously the prayer piece is foundational, but I think what you would be, to answer your question, it would really be that care piece, and that's the service piece. So we take a lot of efforts as a church to pour into our schools. Really, we strive to meet our schools' most basic needs. And the ideal way to do that would be a family from our church approaching their administration, finding out what their needs are, the family coming back to our church and saying, okay, how can we work together to meet this need? And then following through. I mentioned this before, but we strive to be the hands and feet of Christ. And we always say we do good deeds to generate goodwill, to share the good news. And so often it's those service opportunities that we have to really build those relationships. Schools have a ton of needs, and any opportunity that we have to be able to step in and meet those needs, is a win. And that's looked a lot of different ways. We've done everything from cleaning to landscaping to painting to providing donuts and coffee, lunches, playground equipment. Really, it's really a matter of walking in and being a partner with the school, and that has really opened a lot of doors to relationships that have been able to go a step further then, and really to build that trust between church and school. It's been really exciting to see what God's done over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
It looks like in the chat there's a question about like how do you decide which school?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think generally we've done which schools do we have the most relational influence with, meaning which schools do we have students in and therefore families as the bridge. And like Mindy said, I think I painted a couple cafeterias, did some yard work. When you show up to the local, even if your local school is, perceived to be very anti-church or whatever it might be, when you can show up and say, hey, no strings attached, how can we help? We've cleaned libraries, painted hallways, you name it. With no, and if your heart truly is no strings attached under that, like we do good deeds to generate goodwill, to share the good news, you can open some doors and build collateral. The one way of thinking about it when we were more aggressive on this front was, if our schools had a big problem, would they even think to call us to help? And if the answer is no, then how do we develop a relationship in which they know? So we've done backpacks. We've given out gazillion backpacks full of school supplies, no strings attached. So it's just being a servant and then seeing what does and doesn't develop from there.
Right. Yeah. And I would just add that one piece onto that. I love that any time that the church as a whole can come in and just say, we want to serve. But I think the biggest win is when we've got the Smith family, and the Smith family has their sphere of influence. They've got a teacher, they've got a bus driver, they've got a school nurse, they've got a principal. So they already have a sphere of influence there within that school. The Smith family then, as a member of Grace Church, has the opportunity to go to their principal and say, we have a church that is grateful for all that, for what you do. We want to help. We want to be a partner to you. How can we serve you? And so the opportunity then that specific family has to lead that service effort. And then, they're the ones that'll be left there. Once we come in, we do the effort and we're gone. And, obviously then we pray for those gospel conversation, those invites to a church event, those, whatever door God may open in that relationship is, even the bigger win sometimes.
Yeah, I truly believe you just coming in and saying, do you need anyone to scrape gum off the bottom of your desks? Like what's the grossest job nobody wants to do,
Yeah.
and we'll come and do it. Like that speaks a lot. And I think that you're right. There are some people that say, well, the church can't come into the public schools. Well, I think you could be pretty compelling when you're offering to do something that nobody else wants to do. That principal is going to be blessed by that.
What we found lately, our teachers are spread so thin and they're so weary. So one of the biggest needs of a good administrator is they just really want to do nice things for their staff. They want those opportunities where they can uplift their staff. They know that things are difficult, and so we have brought in Chick-fil-A lunches to multiple schools, and because people love Chick-fil-A and they're not going to stress about the small stuff sometimes. And they're happy that anyone in the community is willing to bring that in because they don't have the funding to do something like that. But they want to, bless their teachers in that way. So, so lots of opportunities.
Mhm. I think that, like you said, Mindy, one of the things that I love that you say, it's not cookie cutter. There's not, every church, every community is so different. And so what's really sweet about Compass is that it's just like a storehouse of ideas and frameworks that can just help any community come alongside any church come alongside their community. And it can be very simple and it can be a very elaborate framework as well. And so that's the gift of why I'm just grateful that you're willing to come alongside people and help them navigate that and figure out what would work best for their community. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's a wide variety of situations here. I'm blessed to be in a rural county, small town Minnesota, where the connection between church and school is just great. They invite the pastors in every fall. We have lunch together with the administrators, and they set aside Wednesdays, as we do not practice or have any sports games on those days, because that's for confirmation and educational. It's a wonderful thing. Our superintendent also, we're really blessed. He's very boldly Christian, and he works and cooperates with us actively. As our ministerial, we have the pastors in the county meet monthly and have lunch together. We did that today. But we plan now, and we figured out this will be our third one, the Day of Faith, where we take the kids out of school. It's optional. We provide buses, and we can pick them up for half a day because Minnesota law still allows for 4 hours a week of religious education. We take advantage of that. So we bring them to this auditorium. It's an old high school. And then these kids, it's wonderful because you got Catholics, Presbyterians, you got Lutherans, you got, United Methodists all worshiping side by side. A kid-led praise band, high school students with the praise band, breakout sessions, and we feed them pizza and send them back to school. And they're inviting their friends and everything too. And it's just way cool. We also got See You at the Pole in the fall, where we gathered and prayed in front of the school. So I don't know, compared to some places, we're really blessed to be here in small town Minnesota, where this is just sort of our norm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We all need to go back to small town Minnesota. No, I love that, Mike. There's actually a national organization called LifeWise. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they are an organization that is doing exactly what you're already doing. It's coming alongside school, it's often parents within the schools and reminding them of their legal right to allow their kids to be pulled out for 4 hours a week. So this organization actually provides all the biblical training and really helps you set up a system to work within your school. So I believe we have 4 or 5 now going in Minnesota. I think it's much more common in the South.
Right.
But yeah, that's to remember
Yeah,
that.
if you have a local ministerial association, connect with them. We got, not all the pastors in the county get together and not all of them participate in the Day of Faith. There's a couple of denominations that won't. But the most of us, we set aside differences that we have because we're all here as brothers and sisters for the kingdom, right? For Jesus. And we can concentrate on that we have in common. And it's just wonderful to join together with them to swap ideas and be there for each other. And it's a great time.
Fantastic. Love it.
And I think that's such a great idea too, to find out from your pastor. Are there groups of pastors that get together and would they create time for you to share your heart if you're a teacher or you're a parent, and share ideas for how they can come alongside their church, their schools? That's great. And Mindy too has so many partner organizations and different networks that she can introduce you to too, that help with all of those different types of outreach and support. So
That's
what
awesome.
I'll do is I'm going to put in the chat a link to a Google form. And if you fill out that form, if you would like a further conversation with Mindy or Jim, like they would be happy to connect with you and see what it could look like in your community if you would like to engage your church with the public schools. Thanks for those ideas, Mike. That was really inspiring. And it makes me happy to know that in Minnesota that's happening. Great. Any other thoughts, Mindy?
Yeah, let's look here if I don't mind. Yeah, it's exciting to see what God is doing. I think we can, I hear people often say God has been pushed out of our public schools, but, we've found time and time again that he continues to work in and through those that he calls into our schools. So, whenever I talk about Compass, I am careful to say, it doesn't need to be like all of this. We're coming alongside it. Like I said, we're really early on in this process of our mission to really spread this vision to the local church. But I'm really seeing churches just take small steps, and I'm seeing churches start with things like, just starting with a service effort, or just starting with a commissioning service in the fall, or let's just have a group of teachers that meets monthly to pray, or, there's just really small, simple steps that you can take. We've had 12 years to put all this together. So even one small piece that will just begin maybe something that could grow is fantastic. So excited to see what God will do.
Yes, yes. And he is active in our public schools. I will tell you that he is moving and active, and we could all share lots of testimonies on what we're seeing. And so thank you for caring about this topic and being on this call. I would love, I will make sure that link works. If you hold on, I think I probably have to do some security work on that. So hang tight with that link. When we get off the call, I'll work on that. But in the meantime, I would just love to close us in prayer and send you off to your evening and to just pray about what God might have for you next in your communities. All right. So, Lord, we're grateful that you are ever present in our public schools. And Lord, that you have provided your hands and feet through our local churches. And Lord, we just pray for partnerships. We pray that this call would spur on creativity and connection, and that your church would just rise up and do what they do best, and that's represent you in their communities. And so, Lord, thank you for inviting us to walk and serve with you wherever you have us, Lord. And we just pray a blessing over everyone who has taken time to be here tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Great. Blessings to you. And again, that link will be up and running shortly.
Thanks, Heather.
All
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You.